Hi, good evening, and everybody, and welcome to Farmers Travels. Tonight, I have a very special guest, Jonathan Witt, medical practitioner. But we won't be talking COVID-19 tonight. We won't be talking politics tonight. Tonight, I want to know if he can travel, or at least if he can prescribe a proper travel tip, and maybe make a good surgical cut with his scalpel into traveling. Jonathan, welcome to my channel, and thank you for taking the time in your busy schedule during this time. Um, and hopefully we'll have a nice chat. Can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little more bit about yourself.
Sure. Herman, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me on. Something different. Quite nice to do that. It's not medical, not political, as you mentioned, so that'll be cool. As you mentioned, I'm a doctor. That's mainly what I do, but I have interests in multiple areas. And I suppose politics is one of those. And those who are familiar with YouTube, I guess, and podcasting, etc., will know me from the Renegade Report, one half of that duo. And yeah, I'm interested to see how this chat goes because I'm hardly the most seasoned traveler. But let's see if I've got anything valuable to offer.
Jonathan, I've realized over time that the more you travel, the less you know. But also, the people that gives you the best tips in traveling are those that have traveled less because they still remember the mistakes they made. They still remember those special occasions. After a while, you start getting sort of into this trance of you just want to get to that place, And I think for me and my family, because we travel a lot, this year especially, I think brought on sort of that handbrake, so that probably we should realize that, you know what, stop traveling to get a next stamp in your passport, but start traveling again for the love of it. Jonathan, first question. Do you have a passport?
I do currently. I am purely South African, so I have a South African passport. I think it's got a couple of years on it before it expires, and therefore I have to pay again for the privilege. Yeah, I've got a passport. It's quite full actually. So it appears I've done a lot more. Well, I have done a lot of traveling, but some of it's been a lot of work travel. You before the show, you obviously said to me, look, come on the show and we'll chat about all the countries you've been to. And I started thinking about it, and a lot of the countries have been for work. More countries visited for work actually than visited for leisure. But there's stuff you learn from that kind of travel as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss the point when you travel for work, that you always slip in here and there a bit of leisure, and you can't always just do one thing, and get stuck into, say, for instance, medical purposes or whatever. Jonathan, now, your most favorite country that you've been to?
Oh, this is a tough one. This is difficult because I'm not sure I have a most favorite country. I more have favorite places. If I had to pick a country, probably France, but I haven't seen all of it, so it's difficult to say. I like the US a lot as well, and I've enjoyed that a hell of a lot. So, I mean, if I have to pick a country, probably the US, only on the basis that it's almost 50 different countries in one. Not quite, because a lot of the southern states are very similar, but there are huge differences between DC and even sort of the East Coast working towns, the sort of Midwest, and then out on the West Coast, California and that side of the world. And I fortunately have been to Hawaii before. So that's I think there's a lot to be said about the US, just in terms of the variety of travel that you can do and the variety of a holiday that you can have.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, the culture that is in Europe the US doesn't compare, obviously. And so there's cities in Europe that I think are are really fantastic, and I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, you've mentioned Hawaii as a travel
Yeah.
point for you.
Uh,
What was the most striking thing? Everybody thinks the volcanoes in Hawaii and the surfing, except for those two. What was the most striking thing of Hawaii that you can tell us?
the the travel time. It's terrible. It's the worst. I actually went there for a medical conference, and I was just so I happened to be lucky enough. I happened to be lucky enough to go there for a medical conference, and on the year that they had it there, they usually have it in Pittsburgh or one of these kind of towns that isn't really much to write home about. Anyway, that year was Hawaii. It was on one of the islands, and it took me about 40 hours to get there one way and about 48 coming back of total travel time. My biggest tip on going to Hawaii is that you split it and you stop in the United States for a fair amount of time before you go to Hawaii, and you travel to Hawaii from the US. I mean, it's even from traveling from LA, it's particularly far, and it's sort of 5 hours straight off the coast of you take LAX, and you end up. The runway goes straight over into the ocean, and the plane doesn't move for 5 hours. It just climbs to cruising altitude, and then you just carry on flying straight over the Pacific until eventually you get to the island. So yeah, I think Hawaii. The travel side of things, in terms of the sort of magical side of Hawaii, the nice part about it. It depends where you are, from what my experience is. So a lot of the parts of the island, or the islands, are dedicated to resorts. And if you're there, it's American Mauritius, for want of a better comparison. But it's just a really beautiful kind of idyllic place, as you would expect.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Sort of thing that you say there, to say that's American Mauritius, comparing it to to Mauritius, because a lot of South Africans have been to Mauritius and know, if you know, Mauritius, and just put a bit of America to it, I think it will will sort of give the guys an idea. Now, Jonathan,
but it's not like a gaudy Mauritius. It's not because American has a lot of connotations, and it's not American in a typical American sort of sense. It's not brash, and it's not sort of loud. I certainly didn't find it that way. It's quite peaceful. Look, the Pacific Ocean is a wonderful ocean to swim in if you like swimming in the sea. I know some people feel that it reminds me of a comedy skit. I think it was Trevor Noah did a comedy skit about how you should never swim in the ocean, basically like taking a jog through the Kruger Park. He does have a point, but I personally do like a good swim, and the Pacific is really a wonderful ocean to swim in. It's kind of a mix between the Atlantic and the Indian, but far warmer. And so just a pleasant ocean to be in.
Yeah. Jonathan, I would like to ask you a question. If you consider yourself, what type of traveler of the three topics I'm going to give you now, would you consider yourself? Are you a backpacker, a package tourist, or are you a hotel playboy?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the hotel playboy.
Good grief.
Look, I'm not a backpacker. I've never been able to do that shit. I don't believe in sleeping in tents. I don't believe in taking one pair of underwear that you wash every night and then wear the next day. That's not for me. If you're gonna have a leisure experience, you must have a leisure experience, not something that feels like work. So yeah, I've never done the backpacking thing. So I probably have traveled far less than some people because I've basically been unwilling to rough it.
Mm.
Um, the packages, I've done packages. I have done some packages before, but not commonly. And my issue with the packages is that they too kind of pre-planned, and there's no sort of room for spontaneity. I'm relatively spontaneous, although I do plan a lot before I go on holiday. My mother, on the other hand, is a completely spontaneous person. My mother took me to Italy many years back, and we we didn't have any bookings. We basically had a plane ticket, and then when we got there, along the way we had to figure it out, which made for an interesting experience arriving in Venice on a Sunday evening with no hotel booking.
Wow.
And for those of you who've never been to Venice, Sunday is a pretty religious day. And also kind of a rest day to some extent. And so by 6, 7 in the evening, everyone's closing up shop. And it's quite difficult to actually navigate.
Now, quite interesting. I see we've got Jeremy from Gym Warfare on the chat, and I had a talk with him, and
he's never left the Western Cape. You know that.
Well, apparently, according to him, he was in France, and
that's true. He did do a colonial thing in France. I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you two are totally in different contrast with each other, and that's so interesting, and that's what I like about talking about traveling, because me and Jeremy are sort of in the same thing, rough it, backpack it, not scared about, getting into trouble. And here you are throwing me the whole hotel playboy,
pretty much
type of guy. And it sort of throws my whole idea, that I had. So, if when you travel for leisure, except now for your business and everything, what do you prefer to do? Are you for historical? Do you more like the people, the food, or what would you say in that sense?
I like the historical, but I like to stumble upon it. I don't really go looking for the museums. And I'm not the kind of guy who can spend. I mean, I went when I went to Paris. We went to the Louvre. But I have to be honest. I probably wasted a little bit of money from some people's perspective because I didn't spend the whole day in the Louvre. I kind of walked through it and looked at the stuff I wanted to see, and then I left. So I think I like something I found really awesome about Barcelona is that every sort of third building there is historic in some respect or magnificent from an architectural perspective. And it's just you'll be walking along and there's like a 7-Eleven or their version of that, and next to that is one of the most beautiful buildings you've ever seen, and next to that is once again like a McDonald's, and so it goes. So I do quite enjoy that. I enjoy exploring. I do a lot of walking when I travel. So I like to sort of get a map of the city and just essentially go to all the points you're meant to go to, but walk to them and see what you discover along the way. Food. Look, it depends where I am. Some places I've enjoyed the food more than others. I mean, that's one of the reasons I actually love Paris so much. The French really do make magnificent food. So that's definitely one. And what was the third thing that you were asking about there?
No, food or nature. Do you when you travel to a country, do you go out into the countryside?
Nature. No, not big on the nature. Not particularly big on the nature. Although, I mean, it depends where you are, I guess. I've been to the UK, got family there, and visited them, and then have toured the sort of lake districts, and that's nature, and that's quite magnificent as well. I think I'm using the adjective quite a lot tonight, but it really is a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. Traveling in as you said, walking in just taking your bag or we say I always have a 15-liter backpack that I put on my back and then just go into the streets. And a lot of people sort of freak out when you say that. And out of these experiences of walking in the streets, because I love to do it. Look, especially when I'm in China on business. Once I'm finished with the factories, the first thing I do when I get back to the hotel is I put my backpack on and I start walking. Out of these walking sessions, if we can call that, was there any specific thing that you could remember that had a bit of an influence on your life, or something that you experienced or saw that you could say stop at that moment and said wow, or one of those wow moments?
I find with traveling, when I travel, the things I remember are not usually the take your breath away moments necessarily. I know that sounds odd, but they're sort of the go walking and you have some blunder along the way. We decided to go walking one Harlem is basically, and I was like, well, we'll walk all the way down to the bottom where Twin Towers used to be. And no big deal. It happened to be 2 degrees that day. I think with wind chill it was -6. And it had snowed the night before, so it wasn't exactly easy to walk. I think about 2 kilometers into the walk or whatever it was, I managed to put my foot into a sort of black ice puddle. I didn't see it. It looked like the road, and my foot went. But we did a hell of a lot of walking that day. We saw the whole of Manhattan, essentially, Fifth Avenue, Broadway, Times Square, down to what at that time was they hadn't finished building the new tower. I think you remember it when it was significant, both because there was like an experience attached to it, but you got to see a lot of what you want to in that particular place.
Guys, sorry, on the stream, I constantly get notifications that the stream is lagging. Sorry for that. We do have internet problems on our side, but let's just hope we can continue. I'm just quickly doing some reading on the comments here. It seems like our good friend Jeremy Nell has disappeared from the comments. I've just seen somebody asked which was the best hotel. Oh, Ruth asks which was the best hotel you've stayed in. If you can.
Yeah, I mean the best hotel I've ever stayed in is in South Africa. And that's and I've stayed in some nice hotels. Hawaii was an exceptional hotel that I stayed in. But the best hotel I've ever stayed in is a South African hotel, and that's the Oyster Box in Durban. That's an incredible hotel.
You are going to tell us a bit more about that, because actually me and my wife once looked at to stay in that hotel. So please do tell us a bit more, because I'm interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think also to say about that hotel is it's ridiculously expensive. When we stayed there, it was winter, so the prices were a little bit lower, and it was during the week. We went down to write a medical exam, and I was looking for accommodation. And I went through one of those booking websites, and the price was about a quarter of what they usually charge, and I was like, well, I'm going to take them up on the offer. But I think just from every sort of perspective. So it's not huge as a hotel. The service is just exceptional. The attention to detail, every single detail is just sort of thought of and looked after. Little things that you find in the room, from sewing kits to whatever, shoe polish stuff to, just the way they sort of have set out the room for when you arrive, and it's just a really special place, and the food is also fantastic, excellent breakfast, and you go sit out on the sort of pool deck there and order, I mean, the best prego roll I've ever had in my life. So it's just it really is luxury, you know. It's really thinking about every last detail.
Um, you know, being me, okay, I've stayed in a few hotels as well, but a lot of people can't afford to stay in hotels, always taking the Airbnb
Yeah.
or the guest house is cheaper. What would you say
This is why I don't travel that often. Because if I can't afford to stay in a nice hotel, I'm not
I
I'm
see
not
smart.
going.
I see sphere. Um,
Yeah.
uh, sorry, I just read a comment for those of us or those out there that say, for instance, want to spend a bit of their savings and go and stay in a nice hotel. When I rock up at a hotel, I'm a burki. I don't give a damn about what they think of me. But some people are more set on how you present yourself in a hotel. With your experience,
Yeah.
what are the goes and the no goes, especially the no goes at when you are at a hotel?
Um, well, I mean, the no goes from in terms of. So look, I think to also say that if I know we're going overseas, and usually that's booked, or even a local holiday, that's usually booked months, if not even up to a year in advance. I do a hell of a lot of research. I'll go research. I go find all the sort of nice hotels, and then I look at all of them, and then I go through reviews on everything from TripAdvisor to Booking.com, and then I go and I look for where I can get the best deal. And I think if you do your research and you really are patient about things, you can find good deals quite often and get really good prices, relatively speaking, for a lot of places. In terms of things to do, look, I'm with you. I don't rock up to hotels looking like James Bond. I don't care. Um, at the end of the day, I've paid for somewhere to be, and I've been to. I don't always stay in, like a 5-star hotel, especially overseas. It just becomes too costly, and especially in Europe. Europe is ridiculously expensive with regards to hotels, and unless you are super wealthy, you're not going to really get much bang for your buck, because most of their hotel rooms are shoe boxes. But if you're at a place, if you go to a hotel, I mean, I think one of the big no-nos is never touch the mini bar. I don't partake in the mini bar generally. That's certainly somewhere that they like to rip you off. And I think something hotels like to hide, is they'll tell you about the room, but they don't tell you about the bathroom very often. So Europe's one of these sort of places where the place we stayed in, I think it was Paris, a lovely hotel, but the bath was like this half bath thing. So it wasn't a bath really, if you're a bath type of person. So I think
With the hotels, some of the hotels, and the guys should take note of this, they've got like a magnetic pressure tip inside the fridge. So if you pick up the Coke, even if you replace it, it still goes on the counter that you've taken a Coke. And
really.
some of the hotels have implemented that. I've read it somewhere, and now lately I'm a bit scared. Usually I just, pop in a Coke or two back. But yeah,
Yeah.
tip for you guys if you know.
Yeah, I commonly do that. I mean, especially given our currency, you'll find anywhere you go, if you just go to the shop down the road, the local cafe or supermarket, if you can find one of those nearby, and you buy like a liter of cold drink, or certainly water bottles. We always do this. We just go and buy like a decent sized water bottle. It's far, far cheaper, and then you can still have goodies in your room, but they're far cheaper than what you bought. I found this applied to I've been with my wife to Mauritius a couple of times, and we do the same in Mauritius, because where they catch you in Mauritius, especially if you go on a half board package, is on the sort of cold drinks in the room and those types of things. and the extra stuff you buy, 60 Rand a Coke, for example. But you can go buy a 2-liter Coke for, similar pricing to what you pay in South Africa from the supermarket a kilometer away from the hotel.
You mentioned Mauritius now. For those of us who haven't been there, any suggestions on before going to Mauritius, or what can people expect to find in Mauritius?
Yeah, you need to go. That's like first thing is to say is like it's 4 hours away. It's a quick flight. It's easy to get there. The packages are generally quite reasonable. You're talking about 4 or 5-star hotels starting, 5-6 nights from like 15,000-20,000 Rand for 5-6 nights, pretty much all inclusive. That would be a half board package, but I mean, I'll talk to that now. But the reality is that it's a beautiful island. The people are very friendly. Interesting, just into the slight political quickly, but they've also had a tough history politically, and they've got a very mature way of seeing things. They had the English there, they had the French there, and they hold no malice to the sort of colonial powers. They see them as having been a necessary part of their history and having formed what their island became. And incredibly hardworking people, very hospitable. I've never had a sort of bad experience with a Mauritian. When you arrive there, they've got a really nice airport now. So when you arrive, it's very pleasant. Very sort of first world, so to speak. And generally, the packages pay for some sort of kind of private transport or group transport from the airport straight to your hotel. And that it is the type of place where you can just stay on the resort the entire time. There's no need to leave. I've done the tours on the island because I was interested to learn about the island and see the other stuff. It's if you're into that kind of stuff, it's worth doing. If you're not, just stay on the resort and enjoy the beach. There's the east and the west side of the island. Both are quite nice. The west side of the island is a little bit sort of calmer because it's kind of shielded. And the east is a little bit less so in terms of, the beaches and the ocean, etc. But I've been to both sides and it was really just wonderful and pleasant. Just a really relaxing place to go. If you want to, if COVID's getting you down, that's the place to really go de-stress in the future. And a lot of places there are very kid friendly. They're very family orientated. So it's just it's a wonderful place to go spend time either as a couple or even as a family. You still there?
Sorry, I muted the mic.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
No problem.
If there's any lagging on the stream, guys, please. As I said earlier, we have problems with our internet connection on the farm. I'm still living on a farm, so be patient. Sometimes it takes a wee while to get from the farm to your shelves, fresh and clean. Jonathan, now, except Asia. Now, this is my forte is Asia. I love traveling Asia. Have you ever been to Asia?
You can teach me. No, and I have no interest whatsoever.
Why?
So the only place I want to go in Asia is Japan, because Japan seems like the closest thing we have to alien life on Earth. A completely different place and kind of a place that I think I would like in terms of their values as a society. A lot of sort of honor and respect and technology and just a completely different way of doing things. So I'm quite interested in Japan. If I can get it right, I'd love to go for the Olympics next year now that they've been postponed for a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, so a couple of things about Asia. I don't want to go to China anymore because I'm not happy with the Chinese anymore. So it's a personal decision. And in terms of the rest of Asia, I've heard obviously a lot of good things about Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, etc. When I was younger, Thailand was the place to go. That was, you saved up all year, and that was where you went. You went at the end of the year, and obviously the packages are quite good. But I was actually always a bit freaked out by the sort of stuff that goes down with if you get caught with drugs there. Not that I'm a person who takes the drugs or would be transporting them, but I always was a bit nervous of these sort of stories where you sort of get falsely accused or convicted.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit concerning to me. It's never been particularly appealing. The idea of, I live in essentially a third world country. I'm not sure I want to go visit one. I know there's sort of a little bit of magic associated with a lot of these places and a lot of beauty, but just hasn't really appealed to me. So I don't know. Maybe it'll change with age.
Thing is, Asia is either you have to go there and experience it and come back and say yay or nay. It's like India. When we backpacked India, the first week after we were back, we were like, no, never ever again in our lives. And a few months down the line, as everything starts sinking in. You get to it, and it's like, okay, you know what, I want to go back. Asia, look, it's like a good whiskey. You need to get used to the difference in culture. I don't like drinking whiskey. I don't like the taste, but they say the more you drink it, the more you like it. So Asia is the same. You need to take it in. You need to feel it. You need to experience it. And I think a lot of people, Thailand, in that sense, is the entry level, for traveling to Asia. It's a mixture of, especially Bangkok, of the old Asia versus the new tech Asia. It was same as with Japan. And Japan is one of the countries, I haven't been there, but for people who have been there, saying that how they incorporated their culture into technology without losing it. Unfortunately, in China, they are busy losing a lot of their culture, but that's on a different topic off the stream. I just like to mention this, guys. Please do not insult China. If for one reason, if you insult the great People's Republic of China, you will be denied a visa to visit their country. So even on your Twitter account, refrain from doing that, please, guys. And as
okay, so I'm screwed.
Not necessarily.
I'm definitely in trouble.
Not necessarily, but they sort of, see how you
they
react.
scream.
Yeah, a lot of people have been, and that is their way of doing things. I still have to go there for business, so I refrain from that. And I also warn people. Guys, then, sorry, I was just, Laura Fry said, I'm too scared to go to Thailand with the tsunamis and volcanoes. No, Laura, there's no volcanoes in Thailand. There was one tsunami in, I think, 2004, 2006, and we were there 2 years later. Not that bad. You should be more worried about your plane going down over the ocean. Chances are bigger for your plane going down over the ocean than being hit by a tsunami in an Asian country. So
I actually knew some of the people that were there for the tsunami. So quite something. I think. Look, you can hit a natural disaster anywhere in the world, really.
Yeah.
There's very few places, and now they're pretty much set up for that stuff. So it's unlikely to ever happen again. I still am fascinated by the fact that anyone would stand on a beach, watch the ocean recede about 800 meters in front of them, and not realize that it was a major problem. But anyway, separate discussion as well.
Yeah, but that is quite interesting. And as a lot of a travel tip, and I think, Jonathan, you can probably relate for being over. How many times do we get into? Sorry, guys. I just continue to check my messages because I'm on standby tonight as first responder. So, yeah. Oh, actually every night, but tonight. I think a lot of people make stupid mistakes. As you say, the ocean receding. You don't expect these things. Have you ever made such a mistake that you would get afterwards say, "Damn, I should have thought about it, before I acted, or I should have gotten rather left the place or something"?
Yeah, well, I mean, not that hectic, obviously. I mean, the tsunami was pretty hectic, and obviously there were a lot of people who suffered. Were related to that. I mean, I've had lots of experiences overseas where we've done some stupid stuff. Before I was a doctor, I was a film student and a film producer, and around that time, my colleagues and I were nominated to, when we were in film school, we were just actually finishing off film school, and one of the movies we made was nominated for one of these film festivals, and that was in Spain. It was in a town called Terrassa, which is about a 40-minute train ride outside of Barcelona, which is where they held the sort of the festival, the film festival, which was sort of linked to Barcelona, and we went along there, and the sort of, if you were one of the nominees for one of the awards, you were hosted by the film school, which was based in this small sort of city or small town, and my friends and I, so it was myself and two of my colleagues, we went to the film school. We got driven there by one of our hosts, and it was a major party. We partied in one of their sort of studios, in one of their film studios. And if you've ever sort of partied in Europe, you'll know that there's no such thing as, a single vodka and lemonade. It's kind of like vodka and then like lemonade. So they don't do tots. They do like, okay, you want whiskey and soda, you get like whiskey and then a little bit of soda, and which I suppose some people would say is correct because you shouldn't bastardize whiskey. But anyway, so we obviously had a very good party. Me being the slightly more responsible one of the three of us, didn't get completely hammered, but I was obviously pretty tipsy by the time we left. My friends were completely hammered. In fact, the one was pretty comatose, and the other was just drunk. And we had to get home, but it's now like 12 o'clock, 12:30 at night. In this town we don't really know, and I'm the only guy who like is sort of sober enough to kind of realize the sort of direction we need to walk in. But the one mate who was kind of comatose, we had to find a way to get him home. So there was the shopping trolley, which was a prop that th'd used for one of the films that they were working on or whatever it was. So we put him in the shopping trolley. The guy is like 6'2", 85 kilos. So we put him in this sort of small shopping trolley, and he's like sleeping, right? And I'm pushing the shopping trolley down the road, and the other mate is kind of holding it so that when we go over these sort of pebbly roads, it doesn't sort of fall over, which I have to say it did fall over several times. The guy who was hammered never woke up, even though we dropped him on the road repetitively. And we get within about 300 meters. This is after about an hour of walking. We get within about 300 meters of our hotel. We eventually sort of find it, and we're really happy we're almost there. And sort of unbeknownst to us, there'd been some sort of gang violence or something in the town that evening, and the cops were out sort of looking for the sort of perpetrators, and they saw us walking down this alley towards our hotel. And at this point, my mate had sort of sobered up a bit, so he's still in the trolley, but he was awake. And the cops sort of came up behind us, and then in front of us all at once, kind of the sort of SWAT team almost threw us all to the ground, including my mate, out of the trolley, drew their guns, cocked their guns, and started shouting at us in Spanish. And we were sort of shouting, Inglés, Inglés. And then they realized that they'd basically attacked some tourists. And they were like, then they sort of apologized and quickly got into their sort of cop cars and drove off. So, yeah, that was something dumb we did that didn't work out okay in the end. But, English lives matter when you cruise into Spain.
Yeah, well, I must honestly say sometimes being a tourist saves your bacon. As well, it's with us, it happened a few times. You get it.
Look, I don't know if I can go back to Venice because when we got to Venice, as I said, it was late at night. Well, not late, but it was 6:30 in the evening, and so it was sort of dusk. And we arrived there, and I had never been to that part of the world in my life before. And we cross over that sort of bridge into that main area where you catch all the sort of water taxis at the front of Venice. And, I thought, okay, you get onto the water taxi and you buy a ticket. So we got onto the water taxi, we sat down, and I waited for someone to come past and kind of, bill me, and I would have paid him. Anyway, unbeknownst to us, you never do that in Venice. You have to buy a ticket before you get on. And there's these sort of machines that there are to go to. They look like parking ticket machines. And you have to go and buy a ticket. So we hadn't bought a ticket. And there was, I think it was about a €100 fine or a €200 fine if you rode water taxi without a ticket. So this guy arrives, and he typical Italian, doesn't speak English. I mean, he probably does speak English, but he just chose not to. And he just goes, tickets, and I'm like, no, I want to buy, and he starts shouting at us. And a lot of the locals start shouting at us as well. And I'm with my mother, and she obviously starts freaking out because now they're like, no, he's writing us a ticket, right? And it's €200. He's pointing to the sign on the glass that sort of shows like a ticket with a cross through it, and then it says €200 or whatever it was. Yeah. And my mother's in a state, and eventually I'm like, fine, write us a ticket, because my logic was, well, what are you going to do? You're going to write us a ticket. Assumptively, we've got a couple of weeks to pay this. I'm only in Venice for like 3 days. So good luck. And basically, I've never paid my ticket in Venice, and I may very well be a wanted felon.
Well, ever since that time, they've gotten a bit more smart in Europe. We made that same mistake on the train in Paris. If you get on at Gare du Nord, and you take the train to the airport, what happened is you can enter with a local. Let's say the local train ticket, and me and Linnell just went through, and we got onto the train to the airport. So next moment, this lady comes along, and she's like, ticket, checking the tickets, and we're like, okay, here's the ticket. She's like, no, this is in French, and I'm like, listen, we're from South Africa. And eventually a lady across the aisle that could speak English and French, sort of realized, okay, these guys are definitely from South Africa. And it cost us €100, €50 fine for a freaking €4 ticket. And each, €50 fine each, and we had to pay it on the spot. Not we issue you a ticket. So I think due to your stunt, they've gotten a bit more smart about that.
They've gotten clever, and they fine you on the spot. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually I once got lost on I was a teenager. I was visiting my aunt in the UK, and I didn't realize that when they say, the 1302 from platform 5, they mean the 1302,
Yeah.
right? So I went to platform 5 and I got on the 1300, not the 1302, because there was a train there at 1300. And I just assumed, it's like South Africa. There's a train. The train stands there for 10 minutes. You get on the train and then that's the train. And there's not another train at that platform for another half an hour or an hour or 2 hours. And anyway, I got on the 1300 instead of the 1302 or the 1304 instead of the 1308 or whatever it was. And now I think I was 15 at the time. So I'm a 15-year-old, and it was actually New Year's Eve. And I'm meant to basically be going to my cousin's house. And, she's meant to be picking me up and from the train station, I think in Manchester. And I'm on a train that's not going anywhere near Manchester. I'm on a train that's going to Edinburgh. But I only realized this about 40 minutes into the train ride, where they, because they start with those announcements, and I had earphones in my ear. I had a Walkman at the time, and one of the announcements, I was like, I hadn't heard my stop, so I took out my earphones and I listened, and I could hear that it wasn't going anywhere. At no point was it stopping at the station I was meant to be on. Then I realized I'm on the wrong train. But I'm 15 years old, and I literally had no money on me because my aunt had bought me the ticket, and she'd go to the train, get on the train, get off the train in Manchester, and your cousin will pick you up. So now I'm on the wrong train. So I decide to get off the train at the next station where there's a lot of, traffic going to other places. And I managed to... Essentially, it took me a couple of hours extra, but I managed to catch a whole bunch of other trains to where I needed to be. But I didn't pay a single ticket. Every single one of those train rides was stolen because I had no money on me. And the one time I just managed to move between the train cars to avoid the guy asking for my ticket. And the other time, I told him he had already seen my ticket, and he was like, okay, and he carried on walking, thank goodness. And I eventually got back to where I needed to be. Had to phone my cousin, though. I managed to get a whole bunch of people at one of the train stations to loan me or to give me a few pence to make a telephone call to say, look, I've screwed this up, but I'm making a plan, and I'm gonna get there eventually, but to a different station. And eventually got close by enough to get picked up and sort that out. But yeah, you can really screw it up quite badly.
Yeah, you can
if you don't pay attention.
I was cracking myself up now when you talked about getting onto the wrong train, the 1302, in Germany. Also, you'll get onto a train, and as being South Africans, and that's where I learned. We and Linnell learned that. If that train says leaves for Hamburg at 13:05, don't get on the you say 13:02 train. You're going to end up in Minden. I must honestly say, and that's one thing I think about South Africans. When we travel, we sort of take probably a bit of in Afrikaans is as laksheid. This little bit of, the train will be late, the bus will be late, and then you suddenly realize when you have to pay for a taxi that costs you €50 to take you half a kilometer to your hotel, which happened to me in France. So yeah, I think a lot of people.
I did worse than that in France, actually.
Come on, tell me. I want to know if you, because Jeremy.
My wife and I went to France. It was actually our last trip overseas. I mean, I've been to Mauritius since, but the last sort of trip off, I suppose, off the African continent, and we went to Paris, and it was my second time in Paris, but the first time round, I had never really become very familiar with the city. So what I had done was I downloaded Google Maps on my phone, downloaded the city to my phone before, so that it would theoretically work without having any connection when we landed in Paris. Anyway, that didn't work out. So we caught a bus from the airport down into sort of downtown Paris, and we needed to find our hotel. And when we got off the bus, I sort of said no. I looked around and I tried to figure out based on the map where we were, but it wasn't loading properly on my phone. So I could only see like pieces of it. And I sort of said, no, we need to go like that direction. And so we took, and we've got our suitcases because my wife and I don't do the backpack thing as we discussed. So we each got like this giant sort of suitcase, plus a bit of hand luggage as well. And we start sort of walking through the streets of Paris. And to cut a long story short, the place where we had been dropped off by the bus was about 300 meters, 400 meters from our hotel that way. But I said we should go that way. So we started walking that way, and we ended up walking in total that day. I think it was 14 kilometers with our suitcases. So, yeah, it's useful to try and either know where you are, or sometimes it's worth spending the money on a taxi to take you directly to where you need to be in the beginning.
I just want to ask a question, Jeremy. If you are still on, can you please come on to the chat?
You are mute again, or you're not here.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me, Jonathan? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello. Okay, let's see. Can you hear me? Hello. My mic's working properly. Anybody in the comments, can you hear me?
Herman, are you still around?
Yeah, I'm still around. I'm just checking. Let me just quickly open here. Comments. Let me just quickly. Can you can't hear me? All right. Guys, I'm going to quickly drop the line. Jonathan, if you can you hear me? Good grief, what happened now? Let's see. Damn it. Sorry, guys. I just need quickly drop the line. Get Jonathan back. I think it's a bad line between the two of us. Sorry. Okay, let's see. Can Jonathan guys, I'm just trying to get Jonathan back on. Oh, there we go. Is the good doctor back online? Okay. Jonathan, can you hear me? Alright, let's just see quickly. I just want to set the NDI source. Hi, Jonathan, you're back. Sorry, man. Can you hear me? Hello. Everything is open. Guys, it seems like we've got a bit of a problem. Jonathan, can you hear me on your side? Guys, it seems Jonathan, are you there?
Can you hear me, Herman?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? No, it seems like there's...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Guys, I just quickly... Hang on, I'm just quickly opening Skype here. Just want to message him. I just want to send Jonathan a message. Seems like Skype is an
Hello?
internet con. Guys, sorry about this. I'm chatting quickly with Jonathan in Skype.
Oh, there we go. I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. No, look.
Not sure what's going on. No. Technology is letting us down a little bit.
Jonathan, I think a problem is we've apparently lost the cable on our in Brit somewhere. It was stolen, so the connection might be bad. Okay, let's get back to France. What I was saying is, what is it with South Africans and suitcases and in Paris? And dragging suitcases behind us on that cobblestone. What is it with us? Why do
Yeah.
we want to go through that pain? Because it is the most painful experience that you can have.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, one of the most tiring days of my life because it's one thing to walk 15 Ks, which is not uncommon when I travel, but it's a whole separate thing to do it dragging 30 kilograms behind you with a backpack on your back as well. And, that's was quite a story, but it's something you remember. That's what, as I was saying earlier, these are the things you remember on these trips is these sort of experiences that happen, that sort of unplanned things.
Yeah, that's, I think in the end that's for me what made our trip so memorable, and that's why I said in the beginning, probably for me, not being able to go on holidays, one of the worst experiences that I've had this year, because this actually, in this time that we are now, we were supposed to be in Mozambique, but maybe it is also a time for a lot of us to reflect a little bit on how we travel. A lot of people I found, I always tell people when we were in Phuket, you find that you walk past a bar and the first thing you hear is Backy Bocky Baby, and a Kurt Darren song playing there in the background. Now that's not Phuket for me, That's South Africa brought to Phuket, and I tried to get away from those things. Jonathan, on the last thing, during all your years of travel, I knew I asked this question a bit earlier, but on a more serious note, was there ever one thing that you can say that changed either your political view, your view on life? One thing that you can say, even in South Africa, doesn't matter where you've been in the world, was there an event away from home that you can say this had a humongous impact and changed my view in life?
Sure, that's a tough one. I mean, it's a big question. I don't think anything that was giantly significant in changing views. I thought when I visited Los Angeles many years ago, it was a very interesting city. From the perspective that South Africa gets called the Rainbow Nation, or used to be. I think that's now a racial slur. But we used to be called that. And if you go to Los Angeles, South Africa is not even close. I mean, the sort of diversity in that place is just unbelievable. I mean that in every sort of sense. The languages you have spoken, the sort of the literal diversity of people in terms of every sort of skin shade that you can imagine, food, there's a number of different cultures there. I really sort of, that was quite an eye-opening city. Some of my worst experiences, I've done a lot of travel in Africa. That was for work. I've done a lot of medevacs of patients out of Africa. I've been to, I think it's in excess of 20 African countries doing that work. I mean, a lot of people don't like the idea of South African exceptionalism in the sense that we're better than everyone else. I'm here to tell you we are. This country is far better in many, many ways. Obviously, it's got its major problems, but you need to go sit in traffic in Ghana for 4 hours to drive 2 kilometers. Nigeria. I went to work for Nigeria for a week, I think it was. I did some training of nurses and doctors there, and one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. So I went to Port Louis, and so first I obviously landed in Lagos, and I flew Arik Air to get to Lagos. So if you ever have to fly to Lagos, try not to fly Arik Air. It's the closest thing I can compare to basically one of our sort of broken down sort of taxis or a terrible sort of poorly looked after public transport system. There were literally chairs in the aircraft where they had put like hazard tape over the chairs because the chair was no longer viable. And instead of just fixing the chair, they just kind of blocked it off with tape.
Yeah.
One of those types of flights where you just don't go to the bathroom type of issue as well. And I landed in Nigeria. Lagos is a very busy and very you feel the number of people. It's weird. It feels packed, But when I went to Port Louis, I was the only guy in the sort of minibus. And because I was there to do some work contracted by one of the oil companies, I had this escort. So there was a group of guys in a Hilux, 4 guys in a Hilux, 2 in the front and 2 on the back of the bakkie, all with AK-47s. And they escorted me from the airport all the way into Port Louis and into my sort of compound. But it was a Sunday evening. And we were driving on the highway. I mean, it is technically a highway, but it's terrifying because nobody follows the rules there. So there will regularly be vehicles coming towards you on your side of the road, and nobody seems to give a shit. So you're pretty sure you're going to die at any point.
Yeah.
But lining the side of the road are just shops, and literally shops that people have built out of like cinder blocks.
Yeah.
And it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday evening, and people are doing trade. They're doing business. Nigeria will definitely overtake us as an economy. It has overtaken us, but it's going to stay there because the entrepreneurial spirit there is unbelievable. Amazing to see. Where do you find that level of economic activity at 10:30 on a Sunday night in South Africa? You just don't.
You don't.
So Nigeria, that was interesting from a Nigerian perspective. Angola is the worst place I've ever visited. It is an absolute shithole, to use Donald Trump's terms. Horrible, horrible place. Just basically a dust bowl with like everything broken and breaking apart and corrupt. And the most expensive hotels in the world are actually in Angola.
Yeah, that I've heard.
If you want to stay in the Holiday Inn, you're looking at the same price as it would cost you to stay in the Palace at Sun City. That's sort of the kind of comparison.
That sounds like my kind of place because I love to end up in places where it's literally a dust bowl. I don't know, for some reason, probably because I do my best soul searching in these places.
Yeah, perhaps. Look, there's better African countries to go to where you don't feel under so much threat. I mean, bearing in mind, I'm fetching patients and I'm carrying a drug bag with like tons of morphine and fentanyl in it. And we get to the one guard post and they open the bag and they're like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "It's drugs,"
Yeah.
Then we had to kind of be explained to them by our sort of escort that I'm not smuggling drugs and I'm not a drug dealer, but it's medical drugs.
Yeah.
So
that is. Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah, to try and explain to some of these people at these roadblocks, sometimes it's just, hey, you know what, you want to give up. Listen here, Jonathan, I've just received a notification. Our good friend Jeremy is online on his live stream. And I think it's a bit rude to chew into his live stream. I'm going to cut this one. If you are willing, I'm going to call upon you in a few weeks' time again. You have so many things and information and tips that you're actually giving us. Thank you for coming on to my stream, guys. Please, please support Renegade Report. Go and follow their channel. Jonathan and Roman Cabanak are doing amazing work for us. Follow Jonathan on Twitter. I think out of all the doctors, I can honestly say tonight, if he is as good with his scalpel as he is with his traveling, I must honestly say you made the cut tonight. I believe I will be go under the knife with him if he is as good.
Well, luckily I won't be cutting you, but I'll be the guy making you sleep. So let's hope.
As long as it's a good
sleep.
Let's
hope I'm solid at that.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you, guys. I'm going to say good night to all, And
Cheers.
please go and join Jeremy on his stream. Let's see what our wine drinking deranged cartoonists are getting up to tonight again. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Jonathan. Keep well.
Cheers. Cheers.